All right. Thanks everyone for joining tonight. Yeah, no, this is good. It's been about what, 2 weeks since we last met. So it's our first meeting of the month. Got a couple of updates about a few different things, but I just wanted to open the floor and just see if anybody has any questions or thoughts or anything that's going around in the community that we want to talk about, and just give the floor out to you guys. So, yeah, anything from anybody on the call?
Has there been a decision made yet on the drawdown, or is it still up in the air?
Lou?
Still
Yeah.
waiting.
What's that,
Still
Lou?
waiting. We need a permit to determine what day.
Okay, but
It's
is
either
it
going to
June or July, Lou? Do you know yet?
it's either June 15th or July 1st.
Okay, so
We're
we don't.
shooting we're shooting for June 15th if we can get the permit.
Okay, and when will you know that, Lou?
Another month or two.
Okay,
It takes time.
yeah.
State.
Awesome.
Nick, a question that Wayne had was about the watershed um, planning. Are you hoping to get a grant to cover that cost?
Yeah, yeah. So the 604B grant is the one that you apply for to ask for funds to re-up essentially our watershed plan because we do have one. It's just older than it's just expired. So they're only good for about 10 years. So ours, I think, expired in 2019, maybe. Yeah, Donna, I know I always ask you, but I think it was around that time, but ours is expired, so we do need a new one. So yes, I'm looking to apply for a grant for that, and the application for that grant opens in April. Yeah, awesome. Great. So an update from me. So I know I had posted on Facebook late last week that there was an opportunity to give some testimony to the Maine State Legislature's subcommittee on environment and resources. There is a bill in progress that is actually was sponsored and introduced by the state rep from Togus Pond, the one that in the area from the group that spoke to us at our annual meeting. So that was a really cool connection that I was able to make today. And that committee hearing was this morning at around 10 is when it started. I did submit some written testimony and I did speak that written testimony at the meeting this morning. It started at 10. By the time I got on, I think it was like around 11:55 or something like that, but it went well. I do have a clip of it, but it's not very good quality. But you may be able to hear it, and I can certainly play it. It's about like 2 minutes long. But it went well. Many of the people who were speaking in support of the bill. Oh, so let me clarify. The bill is to introduce essentially $4 million over 2 years to one of the state funds that is allotted to lake restoration in the state. So it's essentially $2 million would be allotted this year if passed, and or next year, and then $2 million would be allotted the following year. So 4 million total. And we did hear some rumors about that coming down the pike. I think late last year, before we went into the new year. And it's good to see that come to fruition. When I was doing research on the bill, it looked like it was formally introduced at the end of January this year. So it's in committee now, and in the appropriate committee for it, the Environment and Resources Subcommittee. And there were many people there from a lot of the groups. There was the person who spoke at our meeting was there from the Togus Pond Association. China Lake Association was there. I mean, there was like dozens of people, and I was reading some of the written testimony too. And then there was even more from there. The Lake Stewards of Maine were there. The Maine Lakes Association was there. And they all spoke in favor of the bill and touched upon a lot of the same points that I touched upon, that essentially this is like a great start, but it's just that. It's just a start. And like, it shouldn't be viewed as like a one and done thing, but more or less of like the foundation of a future investment into this sector. Um, I think we talked a little bit about the report that was released about the economic value of the lakes in Maine. And, it's like over $4.3 billion that it provides annually over the course of our like year to our economies. And just like, the intrinsic social value of these ponds and its impacts on like tourism and, just uh, our communities in which we live. So a lot of people were focusing on that. There was nobody that I saw that stood up during the time or was online and spoke about that were against the bill. There were a few questions that were being asked to some of the people giving testimony about like if one of the questions that sticks out was like if you had complete control and this was asked to a member I believe of a lake association somewhere, um, if you had complete control over this 4 million, what would you spend it on? And like it's a tough question because like that person's stance was that it's a good start but it's not enough. And just like hearing the response to that and just like the complicated nature of like how these things interact with each other and like the future investment that is needed, that seemed to be mainly the only like pushback to the bill. And maybe it's not a complete pushback, maybe it's just playing a little devil's advocate in a way, but it was more like advocated for like, oh, well, like if we're not spending this in the right area, we just want to make sure we're spending in this right area. And even though it's not enough, and even though it might not be exactly what people are looking for, it is still a step in the right direction. So I think that's just the framing that is to take away from this, that, it certainly isn't enough. There needs to be more. But it is a step in the right direction. And I think recognizing that and recognizing the behind the scenes work that a lot of people probably in state government and people who are very close to issues like these probably did in the background is very important because, these things take small steps or these things get accomplished in small steps. Sometimes we would all like a very big step forward. Most of the time I feel like that doesn't happen. But we are forever optimists here in ways. So we're going to take that as like a point of a small win and go from there. So just continued advocacy that, this type of area, like restoring Maine ponds and lakes, definitely needs more funding and needs more attention. So, but it was good. It was a good experience. And it was nice to hear all of these other groups and associations talking about the exact same issues that we're talking about in the exact same ways. Different watersheds, of course, have different problems, but the baseline thing was the same. And it made me very grateful too for our specific group and the amount of people that are involved and want to keep working and be a part of this. So, I just honestly want to thank all of you, everybody here, everybody who attends, and everybody who watches at home. This wouldn't be possible without any of you. And it just like really was made clear to me today that, we are very fortunate in that way. And I think that's definitely a positive to be proud of too. So I know we could always use more engagement, but just a positive note. Georgia? Yeah.
Nick, I just want to say thank you to you two for taking time out of your busy day. I've been at many legislative hearings, so I know what it's like to sit there and wait and testify at the end. And I think it's great that we're in a position to be able to be in such good company with all of these other lake associations. And, sounds like there's a certain amount of camaraderie. I mean, I know everyone's fighting for the same resources, but, we have company. So people in the same situation. And so I'm also very grateful for how far we've come in a fairly short amount of time for our organization and also for you and you're submitting the written testimony.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, it was a great experience to see everybody there and fighting for the same stuff. So definitely well worth the time. So awesome.
Do you
Can you
know
tell
if it's
us,
possible to still submit testimony written?
I don't think so for this one, but I can't imagine this is going to be the only public hearing. I think they said they were going to have two. So I know they had a workshop afterwards that you could attend if you were a member of the public. But I think they said this would be one of two public hearings. So I can check and just see. But I'll get back to you. And who asked that? Diane? Was that correct? Or Donna?
That was me,
Okay.
Donna.
Yeah.
Donna.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I can check and see if there's an opportunity to. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question too.
Yeah.
Is this $4 million? How would it be dispersed? Would it be organizations would file grants to access it?
So I'm assuming, yes. And from the way that people were talking, that seems to be a lot of assumptions from other people too. I can't imagine it would be anything other than a grant per se. I know a touch point on a lot of people's testimony was like, the matching grant component for some of these things is kind of a barrier. There are some communities that, really can raise the capital that's needed for these matching, but there's some communities that can't. And it was good to hear a lot of people recognizing that. There are a lot of much more wealthier communities than ours on very nice lakes in ponds in Maine that, might not be as in severe condition. I believe a question that was asked to somebody who was giving testimony was like, oh, what's the way that we should try to determine if how this money is like spent or how this money is allocated. And like her response was great. It was pretty much just like the DEP already has mechanisms to do this in an equitable way. So, just defer to them in that way, through that agency of the state. So how this will be allocated is not exactly clear. And keep in mind that this still needs to go to it needs to go through the bill process. So this is just the first step in that. I think the next one is and maybe I'm forgetting the right name, but it's the Ways and Means Committee, the one that actually is deals with the budgeting, and maybe I'm thinking about that wrong. But this is just the first step. It has other ways to go, and then of course it has to go on the floor and then be voted on too. So this could not even maybe make it out of committee. So I don't even know, but I had hopes, good feelings this morning just from everybody, but you know how these things sometimes go. But great question. Yeah.
It seems like 4 million is a small amount compared to, would you say, 4 billion that the Lakes and Maine provide as a resource?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And if you think about it as like a return on investment, I did when somebody mentioned that this morning, I did the quick math, and I think it was like 0.001% allocated to it. So hold on, I can do it right now real quick because it is just a ridiculous number.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's 0.001% of essentially year over year what the lakes in Maine contribute to the local economy, and we're investing as a state 0.001% into them. So it is interesting. That
penny
math.
wise and pound foolish.
Right.
Yeah, and if you were to even extrapolate that over the estimated its value over the next 40 years, you know what I mean? Like that's even less of an investment. So like I said, good step in the right direction, but I don't think that gives us any cause to pause or pull back or anything like that. I think if anything, we keep going the same direction. So yeah. Any other questions about what went on today? I think you can go and read and maybe even rewatch the testimony too if you're interested. I can submit those links afterwards. Yeah, but no, it was a really good use of time. So
Who was the lady that Nick that
Grotto?
was it, honey?
Was she Grotto?
I'm trying to think. There's one lady there, like she was like the top dog for the state of Maine, and she spoke like early on in the meeting.
yeah, that may have been the executive director of the Maine Lakes, I think. Yeah.
And I mean, well, she, she's like a heck of a resource because she has a lot of information. And
Yeah.
and I also was surprised at how many lakes are, if you really want to do it, but some of them are worse than ours.
Yeah,
You know,
I did have the impaired list up, like the from the DEP that determines like who's the top impaired most bodies of water in Maine. We are on that. I think it's like a list of like 20,
uh,
22, yeah, and or 25 or something, and we're on that. And then a couple of the other groups were on that too. So you can definitely see it's on people's minds, and like during that question about how that money would be allocated priority wise, I think another legislature chimed in and said, there are a lot of like lakes that, may be more fortunate, or lake associations that may be more fortunate than others, and like, asking important questions like how that money would be allocated and if it would be equitably. But honestly, Justin, yeah, just messaged in the chat and said it should probably start with the 22 most impaired. And, honestly, I agree in that way. There should be a number of different factors, but I think determining, if they have a list of the 22 most impaired lakes in Maine, like you would think that you would start allocating funds towards them. So, but
but I have to kudos that those folks have done an outstanding job in their like our group. They've grown. Kudos to them because they're not sitting back waiting for
yeah,
the.
no. Uh, and every organization, when they were talking, they had great stories similar
Yeah,
in ways, like, and it was nice to be in such good company, I think. Like people who actively care about their community and their environment where they live, and want to see some positive change. So, um,
very impressed.
yeah, awesome. Anything else? Yeah, and I'm very familiar with a MCDA analysis, which is called a multi-criteria decision analysis. It's like a tool used for decision making. You can put in a bunch of different like qualitative and quantitative factors, and you can use that to determine like a level of like need in a ranking order of like multiple different things. So I've used that a lot in school, in grad school, and I used it a lot. I use it a lot in my work now. So when we live in a finite world with finite resources, so allocating those resources in an equitable and effective way, it requires like a lot of different inputs to try to determine that. So, and you can put in like social factors too, like median income, or like sometimes the data that I work with is related to health, and it like, tries to account if somebody has health insurance or not. Like, that is a factor in those types of examples. Not necessarily like in a lake, but like say like if an area is lower income, the ability to have someone on a pond replace a aging and broken septic system would not be there. So it just takes into account like a bunch of different factors. And I hope that they use something similar. I'm not entirely sure on the process that they use, but um, we are currently on that list for that process. So, and it makes sense considering currently what we're dealing with in the community. So, but,
Does anybody know the that list of 25 most impaired lakes?
yeah, I can pull that up.
Do they tend to be in Cumberland and Androscoggin, or is it? I'm just wondering if those two counties are the
That's
most
probably most ag.
affected.
Yeah, so it looks like I just linked a document in the chat, and this is from March 2023, I think is their most latest one. And Sabattus Pond is still on that list. Let's see, just from we have Monmouth. Monmouth is in Kennebec County, correct? Yeah,
Sounds right.
yeah.
I think so.
But Monmouth is right nearby. China Lake is number three. Winthrop. I mean, China and Winthrop, and I wouldn't be surprised if I. I'm willing to bet just from what I know, it probably has something to do with mills, the mill history
Yeah,
of
and
the area
population.
and the farming history of the area. Because typically non-point source pollution or nutrient source pollution is typically where that comes from. So, um,
What number are we, Nick? Does it say?
let me just share my screen. I think the last time I actually counted was we were 13. So we have
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we're number 14 on that list right now.
That looks alphabetical to me.
Yeah. Oh, good call. It is. So there might not be any specific like order that they want to show, but this is the top list. Good call.
Yeah.
Oh, Lou, you're so good.
Yeah, it certainly is alphabetical. So yeah. It would be interesting to map these out though and see if there is a
It
common trend.
would, yeah.
I wonder if they do that. I mean, they must have that data. They must have looked at that. At least I would hope so. But Belgrade
It
and
would be
Rome,
interesting to see how close they were to mills and population centers.
yeah.
And,
Togus Pond is on there. So yeah.
mhm.
I'm
Do you
trying to
remember,
see. There's not many near us. The closest one I would say is probably Monmouth in Monmouth.
Nick? I don't remember all the details, but I know I was involved in it pretty heavily. What was the push for the Clean Water Act in the 70s?
Hmm.
Muskie.
Yeah, no, that was Ed
Mhm.
Muskie, who was the one of the spearheads of that. He was a senator from Maine. He also was one of the leading persons to have lead gasoline removed from use. So um, thanks for that.
Was there
But
a money allocated from the state back then? I know I was involved because I was I was participating in the paper mill for
mhm.
Clean River, and I was just wondering if the money was because of the paper mills, or was it because the state gave them money or matched funds, or do you know, or does anybody know how that all came about?
I'm not specifically sure about the funding breakdown and how that shook out, but I mean, the Clean Water Act was like an acknowledgement that at the time, a lot of our, especially in urban areas, bodies of water, riverways, and stuff like that, have been heavily used by industry for at that point over like 150 years. And like they were reaching their breaking points. Like I don't know if you guys recall some of this stuff, but I believe like some famous rivers were actually caught on fire like back in the 70s and 60s and stuff because they were so heavily polluted that they could be caught on fire. So like I think even the Hudson did at one point. So like it's just like this the Clean Water Act was this introduction of standards of like how you have to treat stormwater, how you have to treat like sewage, like a lot of like zoning requirements of things um, and of course, like funding mechanisms to try to support that. So, and I know it did also get an update, I think in the early 2000s, which dealt heavily with stormwater management practices. My job currently is dealing with a lot of that. Like I work in green infrastructure, which is just like using things like rain gardens or like infiltration systems to collect stormwater in urban areas to try to prevent stormwater pollution in our rivers and streams.
Mm.
And that was heavily like introduced. That regulation was introduced in like the early 2000s, and it was like an amendment on the Clean Water Act. But for the funding allocation, I'm not entirely sure. I know like the money that I believe that they were talking about here is specifically allocated from the state, like in this bill. But I do know that the EPA, of course, issues grants and funding through their own internal mechanisms to state agencies all across the country. And sometimes those play out in ways that are like, and I don't believe this is the case with the dam, but I'm just going to use that as an example. Like, like the DMR is given a certain pool of money that they then can then like turn around and invest in like local communities and stuff like that. So brick grants, is anybody familiar with a brick grant? It's like for like infrastructure and like environmental based stuff. But it's offered by the federal government, and it's similar in a way as to how I imagine like this new allocation of money from the state might function. And it has certain requirements. Typically, federal grants are more stringent about other things, but that's an interesting question about how the money is allocated and raised. But yeah, I don't know, but that's I can certainly try to find out. So
Somebody definitely took that on as a mission to clean up the rivers and the pond. I mean, and maybe that's what the kind of initiative we have to have in our state again, is to clean up these ponds and
yeah,
lakes. You
yeah.
spend money to do it. You have to spend money to do that.
And the sad part about that is like a lot of our viewpoints in our society and culture are very short-sighted. So like I could tell somebody until they're blue in the face, until I'm blue in the face that, if we don't spend the money now, it's just going to get more expensive over time. But since it's not an immediate threat to them now, it's like not something that they view as a necessity. So it's just it's a very like interesting and complicated process with a lot of different social factors, but it is like so paramount that we try to like push this type of messaging that like, hey, we need to be thinking more long term. We need to be thinking in decades and in half centuries than year to year, year to budget year, because that's not how these natural systems function. I'm sure the first person to use Sabattus Pond in the area for the type of farming that is degrading to the environment was like, man, this is a sweet place to farm. But like, you know, did they think about like in how in 60 years like our pond would be not very usable or swimmable for a certain amount of time in the summertime because of those actions? It's I feel a little bit more of human nature, maybe not human nature, but maybe more of our economic systems that kind of perpetuate this type of thought. So
Yeah.
we're typically a quarter to quarter type people, if you catch my drift. But I digress. Yeah. So anything else about the committee meeting or anything like that, or um, any other questions about how that went? No? Okay. Awesome. Uh, Lou, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but how did the signing of the agreement go?
It wasn't actually signed yet. We're
Oh,
waiting for the state to finish it up, but it should be forthcoming within a couple of weeks, from what I've heard.
okay. So everything worked out with the bid process and all that stuff, or like the no need for another bid process and stuff like that.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
We've awarded it. It's just we
Yeah.
haven't actually signed it yet because we need the money from the state first before, you know, Callahan won't do anything until they have the money. They can't order anything, although they did get stuff in motion um, to prepare for the gates. Those are the things that need to be ordered well ahead of time.
Yeah. Okay.
The plans are being made for that, but not the actual ordering of that. Should know within a couple of weeks. Maybe the next Dan meeting, which is, well, 3 weeks from now. We'll know by
Yeah.
then for sure.
Okay. Awesome. Um, let's see here. A couple other things on the horizon. I need to submit our financials and tax records for this year. So that's just something that I'm working on. I'm going to be drafting a letter and sending it out to the towns and communities around us, the like Sabattus, Green, and Wales, just to try to. It's budget season for them, and
Oh,
I think
great.
I think it's a good idea to try to ask for a little bit of a contribution from the municipalities. They, typically I know Sabattus and Green. I think we might have talked about this before, but Sabattus does receive. I think every municipality receives these letters. Like if a nonprofit group operates within their borders, they like typically send a letter during budget time to be like, "Hey, would you mind contributing like $1,000 or $2,000 or something like that?" Like Life Flight does it. A couple of other nonprofits in the area
Right.
do it. So I think it's a good idea. I think we're very well established, and I think we're in a really good position to get some really good work done. So I think the biggest hurdle for us is just raising those funds to be able to do those things. So that will be being sent out to the 3 communities, and we'll hope to see how that goes. So
That will,
That
that
letter, do we
also,
have to specify what we're asking the money for?
typically, so when I was a Sabattus board select person back in the day, and typically no, they don't have to specify it. They just have to specify it for general services, essentially, in those communities. But that's a good point. So, I mean, essentially, I would just earmark it for, um, matching grant funds. So essentially saving that in the bank for when we actually do get a grant, and then we can use those funds to match. So
plus
that
it
way,
elevates our presence and our mission to even bring it up in that kind of a setting. It brings the awareness to the rest of the group that people are working on this mission.
absolutely, yeah. And I think if I am available to be able to go up to one or two of those, I definitely will. If we also have maybe a member of one of each communities willing to stand up and speak to it as like a representative of the nonprofit during those times too, I think that would be a good option as well. Just because they will be voted on by the communities because we have a town meeting structure in all 3 of those communities. So yeah. Essentially the letter is just to get us on the warrant, and then the warrant is then voted on in the town meetings, which is typically in the spring or summers, or late spring or early summers. So
Yeah.
I think we have a good shot. Yeah, I think it's going to be good. But
I think I think maybe like if there's been hospice groups that have asked for money. I think scouting groups have asked for money.
yeah,
I don't remember ever seeing an explanation of where it specifically is going to go, but
yeah,
we're credible for asking.
I definitely think so too. And we like I've seen a couple like one organization I think helped people who couldn't afford new appliances when they had like a refrigerator break or a washing machine break. Like that was like a nonprofit that helped with that type of stuff. And when I remember the letters, they were literally just like one page letters, just asking for some type of funding. So um, I'll draft something up and I'll send it out to the board for review, and then I'll probably post it on our pages afterwards so people are aware, just transparency wise. But yeah.
Any federal money available for that kind of stuff?
So yeah, of course, there's like brick grants and stuff, although the ground is a little shaky right now.
That's
So I do know some people in the grant administration field in New England and down here too, and like the vibe is the vibe. The feelings are generally very like uncertain about what even their jobs will look like, what grants will be available. Um, and quite frankly, like, if it dries up at higher up the food chain than us, it certainly will dry up for us as well. So there's only so many opportunities that we can do to try to access funds. Grants is primarily a major one of them. So if that were the case, we'd have to pivot in a way and primarily try to focus on raising general funds through a different method. So I am still working on not a corporate model, but more of like a sponsorship model for our org, essentially where a business could potentially like be a sponsor. And then that way, like if we do have any like type of promotional flyering or like typically if you were to table an event, which I would really like to do this coming up spring, Sabattus RSU4, not the school district itself, but within that RS4 community, has a resource fair that's put on by a local nonprofit and community member, where they just have a bunch of resources available in the school gyms, and people table and nonprofits table those events to kind of raise awareness. Sometimes there's like tablecloths that you can buy. Not necessarily saying that we need to spend money on that, but like if it was part of like a corporate or a sponsorship model, like Sabattus has a pizza could potentially be on that or something, just as like a way to help raise funds and provide something back to somebody who does want to sponsor us as like from a business standpoint. So, but just I think I've talked about this aspect before. There's only typically three main ways where nonprofits get money through membership, through includes like sponsorship in that way, through just general donations, and then through grants. So three main avenues, and one of them is not looking that much of a prospect from the federal level. So the good news is that it seems that allotted funds or already allocated funds, and hopefully that means dispersed to states to then distribute. Seems like it would be more difficult to touch or revoke. But anything new is definitely on the table for however this administration wants to play this out. So.
So speaking of that, how is membership fundraising going?
I've been seeing a lot of emails. Justin, oh, you might have dropped off.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of emails. I've talked to a lot of people who wanted to become members, and those emails have been sent out. I became a member. I also bought a t-shirt too, so I'm very excited about that. As the day after I posted the video where I talked about the membership model, my dad called me. He's like, "Send me an email. I want to be a member." So it's good stuff like that. And I
Talk
want to.
about grassroots.
Yeah, I know, right? I
Your
mean, he does
dad.
live very close to the lake, so I guess it's good that he's going to support. But yeah, no, I think it's been going well. We've, of course, I think also received some individual donations on top of memberships that people have sent, so that was very generous. The PayPal account is I can see the emails, but I don't know the actual like info on there. But I can talk to Justin after this. He might have lost connection, but and we can hopefully get some updates. Look at that. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
The dam commission asked the town, all three towns actually, every year for some money. We're going to do it again this year, another 3,000.
Yeah.
So if we were to ask for that, I don't know if that would be considered an extra or a conflict of interest. Not necessarily a conflict, but people can be when it comes to voting. So I don't know.
Like a double dip in a way.
Kind
I
of,
don't think
because
so.
you don't think
Go
so.
ahead.
One's for the
I don't think
dam,
so.
one's for the water. It could be two separate things, but people can. But we are putting in 3,000 for each town, and if they don't, if one town doesn't do it, then it won't work. So each town has to agree.
I think that's an important distinction to make. I think we are certainly a separate body than the dam
The
commission.
dam.
I think that
Mhm.
perception in the community could definitely get a little bit confusing. So maybe with our messaging in the letters that we write, or the letters that I write, I try to make that a little bit more clear.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think from our perspective, we are certainly two different entities, and to me, it's no different than giving how Sabattus has gave to all of these other nonprofits over the years. We're just another nonprofit now. But yeah, I can see how proponents of that might think that this is like an affiliated. We have a relationship, of course, with the Dam Commission, but we are certainly like a different entity. Yeah, but great point. Yeah, and certainly something to be aware of. So.
Yeah, the distinction between the missions of both organizations
Yeah.
should be right at the tip of everybody's tongue.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's see. Any other updates from the Dam Commission, Lou, that you guys talked about in that previous meeting, or anything?
Basically, for that, we were hoping to get that thing signed, and
Yeah.
not yet.
Okay.
That was pretty much it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for the update. It's a little bit of a cold snap up there, huh? In the last few weeks. How's the lake? Is it all frozen over? Everybody out there doing stuff? Yeah.
The
Yeah.
rivers are frozen over.
That is significant.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in a while.
What was frozen over, Lou?
The rivers, a lot of rivers,
Wow.
completely frozen.
Wow.
It's smelting a couple times, and usually you see some open water. Nothing. It's solid.
Oh,
We've had at least 10 days below zero this winter.
Wow.
A
No,
few trucks and cars on the water, on the ice.
Yeah.
What
What?
was that?
What's
There's a
that?
lot of trucks and cars running around on the ice this year.
Yeah,
don't see that down here, do we, Donna?
it's 85 down here and 25 in Maine today.
I'm okay.
That was high for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Nick, I have an unrelated question to the discussion about the meeting today and all that, but
Yeah.
and I'll try to ask the question. Um, I'll try to ask it correctly. Say we had Sabattus Pond, and they said the lake is, what's the word you use when there's no more, the oxygen is depleted?
Yeah.
Anoxic.
Okay, so say it reached that, and all we could do right now would be give that an alum treatment. Would it clear up the lake? And if it did, without doing anything else, how long would that last? And how long before it would take all that algae to come bloom out again? Would it be months, weeks, years? Is there that or
So it's a great question. And the answer might not be very satisfying, but it's currently not well known how long it would specifically last for our individual pond. Typically, those how long an alum treatment lasts is dependent on the recycling rate of the pond itself. So essentially, so the water comes in from a lot of different areas. Hold on, let me share my screen real quick.
so the alum doesn't lay on the bottom of the lake?
So it does. So what an alum treatment does is it's a chemical compound, aluminum sulfate, I believe, that binds with the phosphorus in the water, that's in the soil, in the water, and stuff like that. And the reason why it binds to it, and why that's important is because that's what the algae feeds off of. Phosphorus, which is typically found and used in a lot of chemical fertilizers over the years, was a fertilizer. It was used to have plants grow quickly and big and tall. What that does is, since algae is phytoplankton, which means it's a plant-based, it uses photosynthesis, it actually feeds them. So that's why you have these massive blooms, because the nutrients that they need is directly in the water in an abundant way from decades of overuse of fertilizers or extended use of fertilizers that then wash from the soil on the land into the water. So it binds to the phosphorus that is in the lake bed, and it keeps it there. So essentially, it doesn't allow that algae or that phosphorus, those nutrients, to get released so the algae can then use it. So that's why you see people who have alum treatments, they talk about seeing a massive difference very quickly, because it does do that. It literally cuts off that food supply, essentially, in a nutshell. So that way the algae does not like massively reproduce and like grow and grow and grow.
Mhm.
But it is just a band-aid. It doesn't do anything to the actual amount of phosphorus that's in the pond, and it does wear off. So it is like in extreme cases, it's a very useful like mechanism to put a pause on the situation. And for like you essentially wouldn't typically like if a pond was experiencing algae blooms very infrequently, but they were still semi-severe, an alum treatment necessarily wouldn't be the best course of action for that pond, because the the reason why an alum treatment would be beneficial is it gives you time. It gives you time to shore up the shoreline erosions, to put in policies within your local governments to prevent shoreline development. It gives you time to try to see where the main sources of pollution are coming and make plans to adjust for that. It gives you time, but it doesn't. But when that wears off, it does not do anything to what's already in there or what's coming in at that same time. It just prevents it from being released essentially. And it's like it is very much just like a pause. How much that would last for us when Bates did their presentation to us, and this is why I really wish we were able to save that recording that they did. They said it would only last about a year or two. And that was from their calculations. The main DEP, when they did their presentation to us, did say it would last longer because I brought up that specific point that the Bates College and their research did say that it would only last about a year or two because Sabattus cycles pretty frequently. Actually, it's a very shallow pond, and it does have a lot of water coming into it from, we have mountains on, or I wouldn't necessarily call them mountains, but Sabattus Mountain on one side of the pond, and then that very steep hillside in green on the other. And then we also have water coming in from the top up here, which feeds into it as well. So
Right.
we do have a lot of water, and when it rains, it does come down in like almost like a funnel right into that body. So it has and it has an exit, that is frequently opened. And I know we've all seen that dam roaring, or when it's opened, that waterway like down by the bridge in Sabattus. It's some fast moving water. So it definitely recycles fairly quickly. But the exact how long that would last, I don't know. I'm just going off of what Bates had said and a combination of what the main DEP said. And to figure out exactly how long that would last is probably definitely a little bit above me. But you know, that is definitely one of the things I want to mainly I want to look at in the watershed plan when we get the funds to establish that to figure out because the main DEP did say their recommendation for our pond was an alum treatment. But like I said, that's just a Band-Aid. We have
It's
so much
just,
more
this-
to do.
it's not the magic pill. We,
Yeah.
yeah, we still need to identify these source points
But
and
that
protect the agriculture or the septic tank or feeding lawn.
But
We're still gonna have to look at that.
but that's the thing, Donna. In my opinion, we already have that information. We've done it so many times. We have that I know of 50 plus years of studies and data, and we have it all. And we keep talking about it. It's not going to do it to have good any good to have an app if we fix it. And so somebody could tell me what percentage of it is septic systems, what percentage is it of farmland, what percentage is it of road erosion, so you know where to put money. That's what bothers me is we've been doing.
Well, that's where we've got to be boots on the ground and get that information. I mean, it's
Well,
one thing to identify it, but then it's another thing
we already
to attack it.
we already have it. I'm telling you, we have it. We just don't put it all together. Bates College has done it. The gentleman that used to speak on here been doing it for 50 years. Somebody's been collecting oxygen levels, and all that information is there. I know it's there. It's just that we need to have somebody that can put it together and come up with a recommendation and break it down. I mean, we're going to do it. We're going to spend another 30, 40, $50,000. Somebody to do another watershed study, and it's going to tell us the same thing we already know.
Well,
That
the problem with that, Wayne, is that we have to do the watershed plan to be able to access more grant money. Like that you have to have an active plan in place, and reasonably so. Like these things do change over the course of 10 years. Like water patterns, the way it flows due to erosion.
Less
That
agriculture.
information, yeah, that information changes. That so like there is a report out there that does talk about the percentage of non-source point solution and the estimated in a very rough estimation of how septic systems impact. It's available on our Google Drive.
okay?
It's
So say that they 10 years ago.
yeah.
What has been done in the last 10 years to correct any of those things that were pointed out? There you go.
I'm in agreement. I am, and it's tough because there are a lot of dedicated people that do try to do things, but it's tough to do it without the resources or honestly, quite the know-how to do some of these things. Like us physically boots on the ground, like building like erosion prevention mechanisms and like doing those things. I'm sure we can help volunteer, but we legit need an engineer to be able to draft those plans to be able to implement them. And like we need to be able to tell that engineer where to specifically look at a much more micro level than just say the western side of the lake or the eastern side of the lake. And of course, we want to spend our money, and we want our money spent like in a wise way, in a smart way. So we would want to be able to tackle maybe the most bang for our buck for those specific erosion areas. And like I agree with you. I mean, I think if you look at the us talking about alum treatments over the course of all of our meetings, like I've been a very big proponent of like it's not the end all be all. And honestly, like I think the money could be better spent elsewhere. Because I agree, it doesn't stop what's happening. If Sabattus Pond does get to a point to where it is so severe that we're worried that it's going to reach that tipping point for oxygen levels very quickly, then absolutely, yeah, let's try to get an alum treatment to get a pause, depending on how long our recycling rate is. And so it's just I totally recognize your frustration, and I very much feel it. It's just,
Here's one of my frustrations
yeah,
is practice to the problem in that pond is runoff.
yeah,
And now we let Sabattus Mountain clear cut the mountain. I mean, where's the thought process behind that? That's the stuff I'm saying is we aren't smart, not you and I. State isn't smart, or the towns aren't smart enough to 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 figure it out. And even if you did figure it out, you're not. It sounds like you're not going to get a whole lot of money to fix it. So it's
I,
frustrating, personally.
Aware of
I,
that.
yeah, absolutely, and it certainly is. And I think honestly, what it comes down to is what people value. And quite frankly, like when that whole clear cutting of Sabattus Mountain was happening, Justin had a friend that did the drone footage and like talked a lot about Georgia and AB. Even talked to a lot of people or some people in the states to figure out like if they were allowed to do this. Like, we talked, I think, believed to even the zoning, the code enforcement officer in Sabattus that allowed it. And the state regulator that actually was supposed to go out and check to see if they were abiding by the rules and regulations. But like that's the type of thing is like our policies and procedures, even at a state and local level, are not equipped to deal with these problems. Like the whole shoreline development thing being having to be 200 feet away from a shoreline, like on a pond like ours, that's insanity. Like we should honestly not be having like any type of major development on those areas in our pond because of how severe of a condition it is. But the state has that rule, and that's the threshold, and our zoning committee has not changed it in Sabattus. So it's or our planning board, and that's what they default to. So it is. In a way, it's kind of like hearts and minds, and I hate to use that phrase, but like it's value changes that we need to identify. Like, and like I know it doesn't seem like we're making a lot of progress, but in order for people to like be able to accept that, things need to change, people need to value what it is they're losing. And like clearly that decision to allow that type of logging on the mountain by the code enforcement officer or whoever approved it at the time, they valued individual use of private property more so than the collective benefit of everybody around the pond. So like that's the type of stuff that we're facing. Like, it's literally values. It's what people value. And like that short-term economic gain that person received from cutting from logging their property was valued more to them and to the people who approved it than the long-term sustainability of our pond. And I'm not saying that to specifically demonize that person. I'm not.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
but it is we talk on this channel about trade-offs a lot, and I try to say like values are complicated, and like when you value one thing over the other, there are inherent trade-offs with that, and like we talked about, for example, like we talked about it with the dam repair and like the ability to allow fish and alewives into our pond, which the research on is mixed about whether or not it impacts specifically our ability or the pond's ability to like, have worse algae blooms or better algae blooms or less algae blooms. But in order to
There was
receive the
also
funding,
the Ricker farm with the solar panels. I
yeah,
was very sympathetic to whoever, this Ricker guy who has an orchard, and he needs to support his property, so he wants to lease it to a solar company in order to keep his farm surviving. I could totally understand his point of view. I could understand the point of view of not allowing the solar industry to come in there too. It's, as you say, it's a matter of value.
yeah, and like and we needed the money that was part of the DMR's like deal to get the grant money to repair the dam. So that was a trade-off, like an uncertainty, however small, about if our wives would negatively impact our already impaired pond, to the ability to have a freshly repaired dam and a more finer controllability to allow that top layer of water to spill out of it. Like it's not going to take six people to go out there anymore to open that dam. So we'll have finer control over that dam, and hopefully in the summertime be able to open up the dam to like release that top layer of water where the algae is sitting. That's a mechanism to try to help combat algae blooms. And our current dam does not really allow that in a way that's very effective. So like that's the trade-off. And like as we go through this process, for the years to come, we will be faced with trade-offs every day. And like Donna's example, with the solar panels too. Like, I'm a huge renewable energy person, privately and honestly publicly. Like it needs to happen in a national scale. But like an watershed that's directly on a hillside to our impaired watershed, like that's a no-brainer for me, why that shouldn't be there. And do I absolutely respect and understand why that person would want to have that there? Yeah, absolutely. But like, is that worth the collective value of everyone else's property around it that will be impaired by that loss of vegetation? I didn't think so, but yeah, and clearly the town of Green didn't think so either. So, it's just it's values and trade-offs, and like that's what we're up against. Like the money will come when the values change, and the will come when the values change. But until the values are changed, we're going to be facing those same walls over and over and over again. So sorry, roundabout way, but I understand the frown. I understand the frustration. I really do.
Uh, it's like reinventing the wheel every 10 years.
People, short memories. Yeah.
But it makes us feel good when we know.
And I mean, we are making some great progress. Like we really are. Like, I, maybe not the best term, but in a way, a household name in some sense. We are known. We are getting out there. People know about us in the public. Our opinion, and my computer's about to die, so I might have to cut this off. But we are out there. We're increasing our presence. We're increasing our, political and social capital within the communities, which is an important mechanism. We're doing good work, and we're trying to just work for the betterment of our community, which is all we can do. So,
Great.
and I hate to cut this short, but my battery and I left my charger at another place, so it is at 8%, which is probably about a couple minutes, but I would hate for it to get cut off without us. But anybody really quick before we close out for the night? Nice
Next
start.
meeting,
Next meeting, let's see, 2 weeks real quick. I think I actually might have a work thing that evening, but let me just confirm.
Tom's got something to show you, Nick.
Yeah,
Oh.
ice fishing's pretty good.
Yeah, you caught that in Sabattus. I won't be swimming in there anytime soon.
Oh, God, Tom, you're all right.
Okay.
You get that off?
I actually do have I cannot do the 26th. So I think it is more important to keep it on Wednesdays in our local times. So I think I'll probably have our next meeting be on March 12th, if that makes sense. I feel like the Tuesday ones gets a little confusing when I jump around from different day of the week to different day of the week. If anything does come up in the meantime that would require us to have a meeting, I absolutely can. But I think our next meeting is going to be the 12th because I am currently unavailable on the 26th. That work?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Nick,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nick, thank you so much. Is there anything that we can be doing in the meantime? Is there any way to help other than sending you money?
Yeah. Honestly, what I could use a lot of help with is like crafting resources, like one pagers and things like that that are informational, that talk about like fertilizer on lawn use. There's a lot of little things that we as a community around the pond can do to help stop this or slow that curve in the short term. Like, not using fertilizers on your lawns, like the importance of picking up after your dog. Like things like that. And there are resources out there that we can help use to mimic, but like one pagers that have our branding and our like design ish to it, just similar in a way, so we can keep a consistent messaging. And like that is something that's been on my like would love to do list for a long time. But
How would
it's
we distribute that?
we could just print them. We could do door-to-door campaigns. We could do it digitally too. So
Yeah, we
like
can put them on our webpage.
yeah, absolutely. In our social medias, we could even distribute them to the towns, and even potentially even be handed out with the town warrants, every town meeting or something like that. Like these are things that we can definitely do. And I think
It could be a flyer like at Sturdy's next to the fertilizer.
yeah, absolutely. And like the importance of like that type of stuff. And like the messaging on that is important. If there is anybody out there that does want to help with that type of thing or get involved, please shoot me a message. I would love to work with somebody on that. It would be a huge help, and it's something that can be directly impactful like now. And if you don't know anything about those types of things, like something that would be helpful would be just doing a little bit of online research about how picking up after your dog does help stop phosphorus from entering into the environment. And then like just writing a little like paragraph about why that is. And like then we draft it, we review it, we go from there, and then we, create a little like flyer template. And then boom, it's done. And then we move on to the next one, like using fertilizers. And then we move on to the next one about planting native vegetation around your shoreline to help stop erosion. And it's like all of these little things that add up. They're not the be all end all, and I really don't like the perspective that to help us like with climate change, like it's on the individual to do. It's not, but we do have a part to play in it. So there are little improvements that we can make along the way. Getting those that information and resources out would be huge. So again, if anybody does or wants to get involved, that would be a big deal, I think. So
Okay.
yeah, awesome. Thanks, everyone. I will upload this recording. Hopefully my computer doesn't die before then, but if it does, I will upload it tomorrow. So thanks, everyone, and great meeting. Great questions, Lou. I love the dialogue. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.